40 Acres and Maybe a Mule, Chapter 19. Pascal sat cross-legged looking at the stars. He wondered if Nellie had raised her arms. "It be a mystery of the world time," he whispered. "Some other child got to do it tonight," she said. "My heart be fairly broken. I hope them boll weevils come and eat up all the cotton. I hope them white men don't get none of our crop." Her tears rolled like rain. "We knew it be comin'." Pascal felt numb. All day he had worked moving and painting the farmhouse, and he was bone tired. He supposed he had always known deep inside that they would never keep green Gloryland. Emmanuel cleared his throat. "There be a restaurant in town need a good cook," he said, "but I reckon I'll come around to help you all pick your cotton crop." He shook hands with Mr. Bibb. "Any of us hired men, we'd be just in river step." Gideon stood and Emmanuel hugged him. The other hired men and women followed Emmanuel, shaking hands with Mr. Bibb, then embracing Gideon. Some gloated as if they wanted to speak, but they were too choked up. Several held up pieces of gold as if thanking Gideon again. As they trudged away, Pascal called, "Keep your work contracts. Maybe they won't catch ya." Next, Mr. Freeman cleared his throat. "There'll be plenty of work for a carpenter in Riverstop, I reckon. I'll spend the night where Gladness used to work. They be a good people, know about freedom. And when you find another land to farm, Gladness be knowing where to find me." Gladness nodded and hugged him. Passing Gideon his work contract, Mr. Freeman said, "Seeing as though you can't keep the farm, I reckon you'll need this." He limped away, head high. Pascal looked after them, and his heart ached. The family farm was breaking up. At least they got to keep Gladness. His heart ached for all the workers. They were all somebody. He realized that now. People didn't need to own land to be somebody. Mrs. Bibb told Gideon, Gladness, Pascal, and Nellie, "I would be very, very, very happy if you would spend the night." "No thanks, ma'am," Gideon said. He slapped his heavy union cap on Pascal and picked up his apple trees. "We'll be going now, too." Gladness walked by his side, a clothes bundle over his shoulder. Carrying her straw sack, Nellie followed them. Pascal grasped his walking stick, hung his potato sack of belongings on it, and followed them. He waved to Judith and Matthew. "See you in school tomorrow." They spent the night in the Pine Woods cave, Pascal and Nellie on either side of the entrance. Gideon and Gladness cuddled together inside. Stick in hand, Pascal kept an uneasy watch. Were they safe anywhere? The next morning, Gideon said, "You and Nellie go to school. I'll be scouting the road to the Sea Islands. There'll be farms there, I hear, and once I find the road, we'll be on our way." When Pascal left, Nellie sat on the ground outside the cave and said, "I'd be glad we'd go into another farm. Do you mind going?" "We'd be hiding like before," Pascal said as he leaned against the rocky ledge. "So long as we be family, and them sea islands have then some stars and moon and sun," she choked up. Pascal said, "You know what? I've been thinking a lot about freedom." He touched his chest. "Freedom be here, like you said. Can't nobody take it away." And he thought, "Thank you, Mama." Looking uphill, Pascal pointed. "School be only a little ways from here." Glancing at his hands, like he noticed dirt deep under his fingernails. He brushed his hair, and Nellie combed her braids, but he was worried. He could wash up at the river, but it was way far down the hillside. With such dirty hands and face, he might not be allowed to sit with the others. He and Nellie reached the wooded roadside where the teachers promised to hold school. Judith and Matthew weren't there. In fact, for the first time, there were no white children there. Were they lost? Were they scared? 30 or more colored students skipped around and waited. 7 adults, 4 men, and 3 women stood by the road with arms folded. None of the men looked like possible family. In the distance, he saw Miss Anderson and Miss Harris trudging down the road, each holding a side of a wooden box of school supplies. Miss Anderson, long brown hair, flopped loose out of her comb, and she simply tucked it back with one hand. "Good morning, students," she said. "Good morning, Miss Anderson. Good morning, Miss Harris." "Any new students?" asked Miss Harris. She counted. 6? Good. Come over here for letters and object counting. Nellie was told to sound out words in a story. Pascal sat under a tree with advanced students, and Miss Anderson handed him a book. This is reading for comprehension, Pascal. I question you in a few minutes. Her pale gray eyes seemed more gentle. Miss Anderson, he said, they took our family farm, so me and Nellie don't have to leave early today. She tilted her head and sighed. Miss Harris, she said, they took their farm too. Miss Harris shook her head sadly. When Pascal reached for the book, he thought Miss Anderson would comment on his dirty fingernails. But he opened his mouth and stared. Miss Anderson's hands were smeared with dirt as well. She had leaned over him. A wisp of long brown hair tickled his ears. She had let it hang loose, and her long black skirt was dusty. When some children whispered, Miss Anderson looked over at them. It's all right to talk in order to help each other. Mouth open, a boy near Pascal said, Miss Anderson, last time when I talked, you hit my hand with a ruler. I'm sorry, Andrew James. I don't have time anymore for hitting people. I only have time for teaching, and precious little of that. She stared up to the long needle pine beside her and sighed. Besides, you boys and girls have been whipped enough in your lives. Pascal saw her glance at raised scars on the boy's neck. She shrugged. Miss Anderson had learned too, he thought. Later, he reported on his reading a story of Rebecca and Isaac. After his report, Miss Anderson shook his head. Well done. Here's a newspaper to keep. You must read every day to stay a good reader, Pascal. He stared at the hand she had shaken. Next, she gave him a number of stories involving fractions. She explained how they were done. Here's a slate for working on them. Call me if you have any trouble. Walking away, she knelt in pine needles by Nellie. Pascal stared at the slate in shock. He never used a slate before. He loved the fact that he was so smooth and the rag erased it completely. He could just write up to 6 problems at a time, and if he jiggled the slate, the numbers didn't slide away like they did in the dirt box. At noon, Nellie looked at him and left her reading group. It was time to go. Thank you, Miss Anderson, he called. I don't know about tomorrow. She hugged him to her side. Try your best, Pascal. Miss Harris waved from a circle of children listening as she read the story. Taking Nellie's hand, Pascal limped away, smiling. Things can turn around, he thought. Times and people do change. After all, since April, he had been freed, he had owned a family farm, and Miss Anderson had hugged him.